When you hear sensitivity and DPI topic in a game, you're probably thinking like, what else can I possibly get to know about this? Everyone already told me a lot of things and they're repetitive. Let me give you a new perspective on this, my perspective, and before I do it, if you're new, I'm Radiant player that actually never been lower than Immortal, so I guess my perspective may be helpful to you. Let's begin with that. Starting with the easier one to explain is DPI, and when it comes to DPI, it doesn't really matter as long as you're 800 or above. It's about the studies that proved that some mice do have a way better response time in a sensor when they have higher DPI, and that's basically it. But it's not something that you feel drastically, so I would say even if you're used to 400, if you don't feel like changing it, then don't do it. It doesn't really matter that much, but it's important that you know your DPI so you can count your sensitivity and stuff. So when we have that behind us already, let's go to an actual sensitivity part. And in this part, you might be thinking that I will give you some method how to count your perfect sensitivity. And as long as I could tell you how I found my sense, it's not something insanely complicated, and I'll tell you that in a second, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter. And I could give you any method to count it, but it's not that it's the perfect sense, because if you're using something else, you'll have to get used to anything that you will change to. And as long as you don't go too low or too high with your sense, you're fine. But how do you know that your sense is too low or too high? No one can tell you where the actual limit of this is, but I can tell you that the average is like average of the pro players' sensitivities combined, because they're pros, they know what they're doing. And as that could be my short answer, I really want to give you something to eyeball it if it's too high or too low. To begin with, if you're a new player and you want to know if your sense is too high, well, if you move your mouse a little bit and you turn 90 degrees, that's too high. That's too high of a sense. And the same thing is when you're trying to aim and you're fast, but you have to almost always rely on your spray, then your sensitivity is too fast. When it comes to the low part, if you cannot throw utility fast enough, you cannot turn fast enough from utility from others, then you have probably too slow of a sense. But this is just something to eyeball it. And well, like I said, there is no perfect sense. There is perfect sense for you, but you always can get used to something else. And I will explain it that way. If you want more precision, and precision is key, like I said in my aim guide, and if you didn't see that video, you can go watch it after that. But you want precision more than you want speed, because if you build good precision, you will gain speed anyways. That's why a lot of pros don't use super high sense, because you are more precise with a lower sense. When you do have lower sense, you have more space to aim and more room for error. But why do some pros go for high senses? Well, they master the precision anyways, and they're more comfortable just running around clicking their crosshairs more than just flowing with them. And a lot of pros do that with a high sense, and that's because they are used to wrist aiming, or they are used to forearm aiming. That's why they have high or low sense. And well, as long as you can be used to already one thing, so you're most used to wrist aiming, for example, and you want to play high sense because it's more comfortable for you, it doesn't mean that you cannot switch to a low sense to try it out. Because if you play on a low sense for at least, I would say at least a month to get used to that with your muscle memory for using your forearm more, then you'll get used to using forearm, and it will be difficult to go back to wrist aiming only, almost only, because everyone uses both forms anyways in smaller or higher degree. And I know that you came here with a hope that I will give you some sense or some method to use it, but well, it doesn't really matter what sense you play, because in this game, in Valorant, this game is not based heavily on your mechanics. It's more based on your utility usage than your actually mechanical aim. So you can get any sense. You can just pick some pro that you like and try his sense, get used to it, and play as good as you would on your normal sense anyway, because it doesn't really matter. What matters more is to get advantageous fights and not use the full potential of your aim, because it's not aim game. It's a game that uses mostly utility and takes advantage to take more space, to get the sight, to win a round, to do all that stuff. You can get annoyed sometimes probably when you're trying to swing and someone just flashes you or prowlers you or stuns or do whatever the hell it is, because there's a lot of utility. It's not CS. You cannot really out aim people. The game is slower, the headshots are easier to hit, and it's not something that is that important to actually pay more attention to. I would say if you're trying to get your perfect sense, to play around the utility, play around the positioning, and your sense should not be really much different when it comes to killing people, because you should be killing people more from your positioning and advantageous fights from the utility or your teammates' utility or utilizing enemies' mistakes and all that stuff. So the sense, well, how I found my sense? Well, I tested a lot of stuff to find my sense since I was playing CS, and I found out that in CS I like distance more and in Valorant I like distance more, because those games are different. And if I'm trying to out aim people, I'll use lower sense. But if I'm trying to play Valorant, then I'm playing higher sense and it doesn't really matter. It's easier to play off of utility, and my kills are not different on any sense. I can play higher sense than I play now, or I can play lower sense than I play now, and I still won't be doing bad, just because this game is not about raw aim. It's not about purely mechanical skills, because mechanics are too easy in this game. It's something that on some level people just have almost identical. It's so similar that a lot of players just win fights because they're better in thinking, they're smarter in what they're doing on the map or catching you off guard, not just out aiming you. Out aiming is only in the lower rank. So yes, if you're in the lower rank, you can out aim people, because even though they can run and kill you anyways, because it's Valorant, you can still out aim them most of the times, and you can win like 80% of the gunfights. So well, I would say don't pay that much attention to sensitivity, because if you actually get to know the game way better, you'll understand that at some point sensitivity is not something that should be thought about when aiming. It should be something so you can comfortably play the game and think around stuff that you're doing on the map and not really pay attention to out aiming people, because one tapping, it may be satisfying, but it's not something that makes you the great player in this game. I know it might not be something that you were thinking that you will hear while clicking on this video, but give it some time. On a higher level, people don't think about just white swinging and winning the fight, because those fights that you just swing and an enemy swings, they're just 50-50s. Think about it this way, and don't change your sensitivity to improve your aim. Don't focus on that, and you will get better and way faster pace than you think you will. Anyways, if you haven't seen things that I have to say about aim, you can press the video right here. It should be on your screen. And yeah, that's everything from me. See ya.